We have an update on the tragic breaking news story we've been telling you about this evening. Texas Governor Greg Abbott now says at least 26 people have been killed in a shooting during a church service in the small rural community of Sutherland Springs, Texas. It happened at First Baptist Church. The pastor and his wife were not at the church today, but sadly, they tell us their 14-year-old daughter was one of the 26 people killed in what the governor is calling the worst mass shooting in Texas history. CNN legal and national security analyst Asha Rangappa is joining us now. So Asha, the FBI we know is already on scene at this mass shooting. The ATF, they're working with the Texas Rangers, local officials, as well as they start this investigation. What would they be looking at right now?
Right now, the FBI is going to be providing investigative support. They're going to be using their national databases, their ability to check things like where this person may have traveled, what contacts they have, to additionally to basically expand the resources that the state has in order to track this. The ATF would be there also because there's a weapon involved, to trace the weapon, to see whether this was something that was obtained legally. All of this is going to help paint a picture of what led to this. And the FBI will also be interested in the motive for this crime. It did take place in a church, and because of that, there could be certain federal hate crime statutes that could be triggered depending on what they learn about why the shooter went in and did this. And there are even statutes specifically about being able to freely practice religion and criminalizing people who obstruct that. Now, that would have to be his motive for those to be prosecuted, but they may be interested in seeing whether that was at play here.
And from a legal perspective, since you're an expert in that world as well, I mean, they aren't calling this terrorism. They aren't calling this a hate crime. What would lead to that categorization?
Right. So, you know, when something tragic like this happens, whether it was in Las Vegas or here, this is murder. And murder is generally a state crime. For something to be categorized as terrorism and to get to this, you know, federal bucket that triggers all kinds of investigative capacities, certain things need to be present. For one thing, if there's an international connection, if there's a connection to a group abroad, even if it's someone here who is radicalized by an international group, that could become international terrorism. And here, even if someone is motivated by an extremist ideology within the United States, it's typically not going to be characterized as terrorism unless, say, they use a bomb. Legally, that's considered a weapon of mass destruction. So we know with Timothy McVeigh, that was considered an act of terrorism or a federal facility. But mass shootings are not enshrined in our law if they take place domestically with no international connection as a terrorist act. So
here's what we do know about the weapons that were used in this shooting. We heard from the federal or the investigator on scene, the regional director of DPS, the Department of Public Safety, describe an AR rifle. We've learned through sources who are talking to our Evan Perez that this was a .223 rifle, and there are additional firearms found in his car. ATF agents are also on the scene. Does the type of weapon matter in terms of this investigation?
It will definitely matter because it will be traced to how he got it. What were the channels that this person obtained it? Were they obtained legally? And I think from a broader perspective, there may need to be a conversation about the kinds of weapons or magazines, all of these things that can go into mass casualties in a short period of time. But all of this is going to be data to determine exactly how this was planned and executed, how much of it was through legal channels, and that will determine some of the response.
We've now learned the suspect is 26-year-old Devin Patrick Kelly. He's dead. We don't know if he shot and killed himself or if he was killed by this citizen who apparently grabbed his rifle and then pursued the suspect and this killer. Investigators seem to be holding a lot close to the vest, even when it comes to this suspect. They didn't come out in this press conference and reveal the name, but clearly they have a name. Is there a reason to keep it so close to their vest?
Well, if they think that there may be connections, if this was planned with potentially other people who knew about it, they're going to want to keep a little bit tighter so that until they uncover exactly the extent of it. Now, it could be that this was this was what they call a lone wolf, somebody who just spontaneously acted alone. I mean, may have been planning it, but really no one knew what was happening. But in the initial stages like this, I think it's normal for law enforcement to want to keep these cards close to the chest until they know more about him and his contacts.
And we also know that this shooter was dressed in tactical gear and a ballistics vest. Does that indicate planning?
That to me tells me that this was something that was planned. Obviously, that's not someone who, rolls out of bed and suddenly has, a moment of craziness and goes out. This is somebody who clearly saw this as kind of some belligerent act that they were going to dress up for and prepare for. And again, that goes back to why law enforcement may take some time to actually reveal who this person is, because if it was planned, they're going to want to go back and look through and see how much of that plan they can piece together in order to determine how this all took place.
Asha Rangappa, thank you so much. We really do appreciate your expertise on this. Joining us now on the phone is Sheriff Joe Tackett of Wilson County, the county where this church is located. Sheriff, we know that it's a busy night for you there. Thank you for spending some time with us. Reports are circulating about the gunman's identity. Can you confirm the shooter's name? Can you tell us his name, Devin Patrick Kelly?
Okay.
I
don't have the shooter's name at this time.
Okay, was he from the area, though? Can you tell us that? Did he have a connection to this church?
We don't think he had any type of connection to this church.
You don't think he had any type of connection?
He was not from this immediate area.
What do you think brought him there? Have you been able to put together any pieces as far as that goes?
No, not at this time.
We learned at that press conference the shooter was wearing all black tactical gear, ballistic vest, giving the impression that this was planned. Any idea as far as a motive goes?
No, we have no motive. So he was seen shortly before at a Valero convenience store across the road. And the call that my office got was that there was an active shooter in the church. So, I mean, there was no indication anything was going on, until we got the call that he was in the church.
So you're saying there was no warning. Where does the investigation stand right now?
Well, we're still investigating everything that we have there. We have not identified any of the victims at this time. That's a slow process. We're trying to get family members and friends to get us photos and, write the name of the person on the photos, and so that we'll kind of know a little bit more. I mean, right now we don't. There's no way, especially the younger people, because they don't have identifications on to know who they are. So we're just waiting now to see if we can get the photos and stuff when we go in and try to take out the bodies of what we're going to have.
Okay, so as you're working on that part of the investigation, just to identify who the victims are, obviously this is a very big investigation. There are a lot of resources on the scene who are helping out, from the ATF to the FBI to the Texas Rangers, we learned. A law enforcement source is telling CNN that the shooter used a .223 rifle. Do you know, was it a semi-automatic weapon?
I do not know at this time if it was a semi or fully automatic. I do not know.
This church recorded its services. Was this service being recorded at the time of the shooting?
Yes, I think it was being recorded. But the person that was recording it, he was taken to the hospital.
The person who was recording it was taken to the hospital?
Yes.
Oh my.
He was not shot, but he was taken to the hospital.
Okay. I understand a neighbor confronted the gunman. Yes. Can you tell us more about him?
Well, he was across the street and he heard the shots and he got his weapon and he went outside and The shooter dropped his rifle at the time and got in his vehicle and took off. And we still don't know at this time until the medical examiner examines his body whether he was shot by the neighbor or not.
Do you believe it was that neighbor, though, who stopped the shooting?
Well, he was coming out of the church, as our understanding. So he was probably fixing to leave. And at that point, the neighbor engaged with him, but I think he had more than one weapon on him.
I know you are still working to identify the victims, but we do know that the youngest was just 5 years old. And can you tell us any more about this congregation, who these victims are, without even having to identify them specifically?
No, I can't give you any of that.
Okay. Tell us about your town. I keep hearing it's a place where everybody knows everybody. People don't worry about locking their doors.
Pretty much, but you just never know this day and time, what happened out there. It's just very unfortunate, for the man to walk into a church and start firing. So,
Sheriff Joe Tackett. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please continue.
Okay, so at this time we don't know any reason why the guy came to Sutherland Springs Church and opened fire. We just don't have any. We'll probably never know now because the suspect is dead. So.
Okay, Sheriff Joe Tackett, thank you again for your time, and thank you for sharing what you could with us. We do appreciate it. We'll continue to think about your community and pray for you all.
Okay.
Thanks again. We're back in just a moment. Stay with us on CNN.